Well, you need some kind of server-side thing. It's a very abstract. You don't realize how abstract the question is that you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah, you need something that's going to capture all that stuff, and then you've got to store it someplace. So what you usually have, right, is you've got some front-end language, right? This could be a Python script, or this could be a Ruby script, or this could even be like a Node.js script. And it talks to either a flat file, right? It stores all your data as like comma separated values or something like that, or it talks to, and of course, the international take symbol for databases, some kind of database store. This is what I'm teaching this summer in my Rails class. This part. We're only worried about, right, the HTML page in your browser, but that URL can talk to one of these things. Yeah. It's a little bit more involved, but depending on what you want to do.
I know, I really hide it from I was probably in the
I move around a lot. I don't think you've ever sat in my classes before, but I'm back and forth and all over the place, so. This is ITMD 362, Human-Computer Interaction and Web Design. Yeah. Okay, sure. It could be, yeah. Yeah, it might be just a straight-up HCI course. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Yeah, I won't teach my first grad class in ITM until May. I'm teaching a class on Rails. What's that, the course name? Or my name? I'm Professor Stolle. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Whoop. Nice to meet you. Yeah, if you want to come learn Rails, that's what I'm teaching. ITMD 513, I think. It'll be in the summer. I usually write stuff here and there. I'll turn these lights off because I'm mostly projecting, but I'm just warning you that I move around a lot. All right, what are we doing here? Firefox.
I'm just saying. Oh my God, he was the secret language tag. I forgot about that. That's voice tag. Who is important? Name tag?
All right. Well, it's already after. We should start. Monday nobody came because it rained. Wednesday they didn't come because it's too nice out. Okay. So today, got a few orders of business here. So I want to introduce Project 3, which will be your final project in the class, and then we're going to do some things with the JavaScript prototyping stuff from Monday. These other 2 points about usability might just get squished into next week. I'm okay with that. So let's look at Project 3. All right. So Project 3 will be a user-tested revised web portal. All right, so the fun project of the course asks you to subject your group's web portal redesign project to a series of low-stakes user tests and to suggest improvements to the web portal redesign project based on what you learned through your test. I toyed back and forth with actually making you do the improvements, and then I was like, nah, we'll just write up some reports and leave it at that. So you should structure your tests around the guidance in Chapter 9 of Krug's book, right? That's the Don't Make Me Think book. You are welcome to use as a starting point his sample script and recording release form at his website. I've provided the link there. However, your script must be modified to match your specific tasks and project, obviously. All right, so the goals for this project are to evaluate user interface designs with human subjects, to demonstrate how user-centered concerns can be incorporated into system development life cycles. That's one of the on-the-books goals of this class. I did not write that horrible sentence, so please try not to judge me. I'm just following orders. But you will do that. We could just think of like 1,000 better ways to say it. You will explain the need to evaluate system usability and conduct usability tests on mobile and traditional devices. Okay, so your deliverables and milestones. Unlike previous projects, your deliverables for this assignment should be turned into the instructor as a Dropbox or Google Drive share URL. All right, and the reason is that you're not submitting a bunch of code for this one. Do not use the internal sharing function on Dropbox or Drive with the instructor. I will show you how to generate share links if you don't know how to do this. There's an internal like Dropbox share thing, and I hate it when people use that because then I get notifications on my desktop like, oh, Aaron shared a file with you. It's like, I don't care. I want to see it in my inbox. So sorry to pick on you, Aaron. It's okay. You didn't really do anything wrong. You're just the person I was looking at when I came with that example. So you'll generate a shareable URL that you paste yourself in an email to me. The URL should point to a folder containing thoughtfully named files and folders containing each deliverable listed below. All right. So here are the deliverables that you have. 3 of them are due on the 19th of April, which is coming up in a week. So you'll have a testing script that you'll submit to me by 11:59 p.m. on 4/19. That will include a welcome to your participant, an explanation of the process, and an outline of the exact tasks you will be asking participants to complete. Okay? You'll do an AV release form for each participant to sign, partially because you are going to be recording these sessions in some way. You will have a site plan, so some location on campus or another location, the equipment that you'll need there, and then the setup and arrangement. All right? So those are the 3 deliverables that you'll need right up front. Then on May 3rd, you'll have the following deliverables due. So 4 is a video recording of each participant session. You'll do testing notes and 3 major issues per observer per participant. Those are due on the 3rd. And then a group-authored recommendation report due by 11:59 on 5/3 on the 3 most pressing issues that you identified through your testing, including an explanation as to why the issues you've selected are the most pressing ones, a possible approach to implementing fixes or improvements to address the issue, and 3 is future usability tests you'd run to ensure the quality of the fix. All right? And then your final deliverable is an individually authored 4 to 5 sentence self-critique of your project and your progress in class this semester, in addition to 4 to 5 sentence critiques for each of your group members. All of those emailed to me by 11:59 p.m. on 5/3. Okay? I'm going to wake up on the morning of May 4th and grade like my life depends on it. So 11:59, 5/3 if you want credit for this project. Okay, so your requirements for this project are you will test your site with 3 different participants, not in our class. So between you and your group members, you have to find 3 friends or people or something. At least 1 participant should use a mobile device, phone or tablet, and at least 1 should use a traditional device, desktop or laptop. When possible, and this is unorthodox, like if you go to most usability tests, they'll be like, oh, please come sit down and have a, open up the laptop that we provided for you. When actually have participants use their own devices for the test, which means that you're going to have to somehow either post to GitHub pages or run a local web server that they can hit, something so that they're able to pull up your project on their devices. Okay? You'll figure out how to best involve online students in your group who cannot be present on campus for testing. You'll want to include those details of how online students in your group will be able to participate as part of your site plan. And then finally, you'll submit all deliverables as an email to me. The email must contain your individual reflection memo and a URL to a shared Dropbox or Google Drive folder to which all group members have read and write access. Okay? I'm not chickening out away from GitHub on this last thing. This is to help you deal with your future professionalization in dealing with managers, right, who are not going to understand how to read your report in GitHub. So you've got to send it to them in Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. Okay? Questions? Comments? Is it clear? So you're doing project 2. You're building this interface. You got feedback from me yesterday, which high five to me for getting all that feedback done yesterday. I'm awesome. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. So you've got feedback from me. You can improve the thing further. Then you'll have this week to keep working on it. I will give you some more feedback on the final thing that you can then implement if you're smart. Then you will test that thing on actual human beings. Okay? And the main thing to remember is that it is the project that you are testing, not people. Right? Okay. Any questions? Comments, concerns, smart remarks? Okay. Great. Okay. So one of the comments that I gave to a lot of groups yesterday was that you need to refactor something. You need to refactor your CSS, or you need to refactor your JavaScript. What does that actually mean? What does the verb to refactor mean? Has literally no one in this room ever heard this word before? Redivide it?
Or like reorganize it into more sections?
You're good with reorganize, right? That's part of refactoring. Okay, so it's an option, or it's an opportunity to organize your code better, right? Look at the slop that I've got from what I did on Monday. Here's our, okay, no conflict, and then we're inside of our protected jQuery ready event here, right? And then I've got these test users, then suddenly I'm onto this toggle label function that I've created. Then here's another wacky function, current user, and then some jQuery calls, some more jQuery. Here's this whole thing with the password. Here's the whole thing with the login. So it's a chance for me to think about, am I ordering all of that stuff sensibly, right? What else might we do with refactoring? There's a good word from writing classes, if you ever took a writing class. Right? You draft your writing, and then what do? Edit. Rue, I heard it. Who said revise? John gets the gold star for today, right? We're going to revise this thing. And of course, these two things are things that developers rarely do, right? You look at a pile of source code of some legacy thing you've got. It's completely disorganized, and clearly they wrote it until the thing that they were supposed to do worked, and then they stopped, right? Which means that your life as the new junior developer on the team who's been asked to implement some new feature, you're probably going to have to do one or both of these things just to get the code base to a place where you're not going to break everything, right? And another thing that we can do with refactoring is to think about implementation of stuff, right? So, the first thing I want to tackle is actually this toggle label thing, right? Which I had a conniption about on Monday, thanks to my allergy medication, and I was convinced that there's a way to do a toggle function with just 2 arguments to it. Turns out the reason that that was in my brain is that usually when I write toggles like this, they are objects, or rather methods on an object. So you already get the object passed in, right? That's what we expect in jQuery. We can say, you know, give me ID password input, and it will give us the HTML. We don't have to actually pass in an argument like that. But this is a useful function, right? Because I've used it 2 different places in my code. I used it to toggle this attribute, and I used it to toggle the message in that little button. So I want to save it. I want to preserve it somehow. So the first thing I will probably do is to create a branch, right? blow this up. Refactor.js, right? Everybody getting in the habit with your groups, checking out branches, creating branches so you can do your work. If you're not doing that, get in the habit of it. I should model that more in class, but I am today, okay? All right, so I'm on this Refactor.js branch. So I'm going to change this function to be named something else, and I'm actually going to call this a much more generic thing, toggle value. And I'm going to say old value, new value, current value, like that. Okay, so this is usually when we're refactoring, you're usually not modifying your public API, right? You're doing all of the work below the scenes. So I'm actually doing a little bit more than refactoring here because there actually will be no toggle label function as I designed it previously. Okay, just going to have this simple toggle label thing. But when I'm looking at my work, and usually it takes a couple days, right? You've got to go back, look at what you've written previously. What don't you like about what I wrote here? Apart from the fact that the variable names are no longer true, right? I changed all those. Old value, new value. I'll rewrite these even though I want to destroy half of this. Old value, current value. I mean, come on, programmers. What do you set your sights on when you're trying to make code better? Okay, you want to make it shorter. And what's the easiest way to make something shorter? What's the easiest way to make something shorter? What's the easiest way to make something? I'm trying to demonstrate this. I'm repeating myself, right? When we see things that are repeated, there are 2 return statements on here. That's unnecessary. We should have just one return statement, right? At the bottom of the function, so you know exactly what the function is returning, so you don't have to read through every single if-else statement, right? Imagine if this was much more complex logic in here, if we had 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 if-else statements. You've got to go through and look at every single one of those things and figure out what's being returned there. Okay? So what I want to have is one return statement at the bottom. Return value. Okay? Which I have not declared any place in here yet. And I would like to be able to do something like this. Have one single if statement, in this case, where we've got just a simple binary. If, else, let's figure that out outside of it. So what I might do is in the body of my function, something like this. Var value is equal to old value. Do you see this? At the very bottom of the function, I'm going to return value. It already has a value assigned to it. I know this is totally confusing because I've got a variable called value. I keep saying value. Just return old value. But then it's not going to toggle anymore, right? Because what I need to do is check if old value is exactly equal to current value, then value needs a different value. Value is equal to new value. See what I did there? Okay, so at the top we're saying, hey, the value is old value, unless the current value, and of course we could rewrite this if this makes sense, right? We could write this, there's no reason we couldn't write current value is equal to old value, right? The current thing is equal to the old thing, then assign new value to value. And then we get to the very bottom of the function, just return whatever value has been assigned, right? That's elegant. No waste, no duplication. Everything in here is doing one thing, doing it well, and doing it the first and only time. Yes?
I was going to say, you could do it without creating another variable.
You could. How would you do it?
If you just left it the way you did before, and just return old value at the bottom. If you did it the way before, old value never changes. It stays the same. You're just checking if it's the same or not.
Right. But if it's different, then what are we going to do? We would do something.
We're returning new value, but old value still never changes.
It doesn't, but this allows both the old or the new value to be returned depending on what the current value is, which in a toggle is going to change. I don't know. I'll push the commit up, and then you can go onto GitHub and then rewrite it as you would and submit it as a pull request, and I'll maybe accept it. All right? So this is nice. And what we might do at this point as just a very rough test to see if what we've done works is to change this toggle value or toggle label with toggle value. I'm not going to leave it as this because I want to change how this is done too, but I can change these two things. I can fire up good old HTTP server. Go to localhost. Okay, so now if this is working, okay. All right, everybody agree that that refactored function is doing what it's supposed to? Okay. Now, one thing that I'm missing is I keep getting this null value up here, and actually if I pull open my console, I should see some errors thrown at me, I think. No, it's not. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I fixed that. All right. So we've done this toggle value thing. Have we talked about patch mode with Git? Ooh, see? This is the day to show up, Jingwen, because I'm getting to all the stuff that I've never talked about before. All right, so right now I've changed two distant things. Right? If I do git status and do git diff, I'm going to get this, right? Where here's one change. This is one related thing here where I've got toggle value, right? Used to be toggle label. Here I've completely refactored that function. Then down below, I wrote some code that, yes, that's part of this change, right? But this is just temporary. I wanted to make sure that my refactored function is still behaving as it does. So what do you do if you only want to commit the top part but not the bottom part of this file? Did you know you could do such a thing in Git? All right, this is awesome, right? So I don't want to commit this. This is garbage. I'm going to write some more code. I don't want to commit this as part of the history. I just want to commit my new function definition. So I can do this. I can do git add patch. All right? Nobody's seen this before? Means you didn't read very far in that Travis Swice good Git book back in the fall. Okay? So, in this impossible to read blue text down here, it says stage this hunk. Right? So you have to manage a big, or I don't know. Stage this hunk. And then it gives us a whole bunch of options. The first two are the most important. Yes or no. If we wanted to, we could break this up into smaller hunks. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to stage this hunk because this is exactly what I want to have in my commit, not that slop below. All right? So I say Y. My microphone. Say, yes, I want to stage this hunk. Then it gets me to this other one. Do I want to stage this hunk? No, I do not want to stage this hunk. I want that one to go away. So I say no. And then it returns me to my prompt because I've gone through the two parts of the file that have been changed. Okay? Here's an interesting thing. If I run git status again, you get this weird, you've never seen this before, right? Where on the one hand we have something that's changed as to be committed, JS, site JS, and unstaged or not staged for commit, JS, site JS, right? We've only staged one part of this file, the part that we actually want to keep for the history. All right? So now it just works like any other commit. I can say just git commit -m refactored toggle label function to toggle value. Like that. If I run git status again, I've still got these unstaged changes. If I run git diff, there they are in all of their ugly glory. And what I'm going to do is, rather than commit these, I'm going to do git checkout dot. So now I've checked out the file to where it was before I mucked with those two lines. So if I do git status, it's clean, right? There's no diff here, and if I look back in my file, I'm still referring to this now non-existent toggle label function. Okay? Now, one of the tragedies of teaching is sometimes you do sloppy practices just to get through the point of what it is that you're teaching, rather than necessarily coming back around to get better practice on things, right? jQuery is an object-oriented framework, right? We're able to say things like, bad marker, right? If I have an element called ID user, right? I can select that thing that way. How do I get the HTML value of ID user? Do I have to write HTML ID user? Is that how I do that in jQuery? Look alive, people. Holy God. No! Right? Because this is functional programming. jQuery is object-oriented. If we want to get the HTML value of something, we do HTML, like that. And if we want to set it, then all we have to do is pass that same method an argument, hi. Okay? So what I want to be able to do is get rid of this slop. Right? Look how ugly this is. Right? I want to do password, get the attribute type, but I'm going to toggle that thing. No. I want to do a much cleaner implementation of that, right? I want to get my ID input, and I want to do toggle attribute, and I want to give it the name of the attribute, oops, which is not input. What's the attribute that I'm toggling? It's usually password. It becomes text. What's the actual attribute? Those are the values. What's the attribute? Nope. Type, right? This is the implementation on the right. See how clean that is? Toggle attribute, type. Okay, and we'll probably have some other arguments here, like password and text, right? So we can pass in that whole thing. But now we've got a much cleaner thing. We're going to toggle the type attribute, password, and text. Those are the two things we're going to toggle back and forth. Which of these don't work anymore? Okay? And same thing with that toggle label. I want to be able to choose something and say toggle label. And give it two things that I want to toggle, show and hide. Right? This is a great way to program with a marker or a pen or a napkin or a bloody finger. Like, this is how I want the actual method to be, right? So you can figure out what you're shooting for. This is what I should be able to write in my highest level code, and then we go back and figure out how to write this thing in the lower levels, right? Which is why, and hopefully this will be clearer in a second, that's why I kept this toggle label function around, because that's doing a very nice thing. It's toggling something, right? This is even more abstracted than toggle label. This just says toggle value, right? Which might be an attribute value or a label or true false. Who knows what it could be, right? This could be a lot of different things. So how do I, in jQuery, write my own methods right like this, right? jQuery has its own methods like toggle class, which I recommended to a few people. How do you write your own thing like that? How do we register this with jQuery? Does anybody know? Have you dived this deep into jQuery? jQuery FN. I don't even want to go this deep. This allows us to extend different things. I'm going to just register directly on that jQuery FN object. I'm not going to spend too much time on the documentation because I've got a lot further I want to go. Okay, so I'm going to say $FN toggle label is equal to a function. And here, because this is just my own script that I'm not sending out for production as a jQuery plugin, I'm going to say toggle attribute equal to a function. Just like that. Okay? So that's going to allow me to do things like, and actually because these are statements, we need to terminate them with semicolons, right? Because we're using this where we're setting that equal to a function, which is how you create a method on the fly in JavaScript when you've already got an existing object, right? So we've got this FN object we're referencing, okay, which is basically similar to the prototype chain on jQuery, right? So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to change my methods, right? So goodbye attribute type and all this mess. I'm going to say toggle attr. And because I'm going to deal with the attribute, I know I'm going to work with the type attribute, and that password and text are the two things that I'm working with back and forth. Boom. Look how I've cleaned that up. It all fits on the screen now. So I'm saying I want to go for ID password, toggle the attribute type, toggle it between password and text. Is everybody happy with the order of those attributes? It's our JavaScript method. We can order them however we want. Does that make sense? Sometimes you can't know unless you do something like this. Does this make sense? Password type text? No, right? Because the things that we're toggling between are password and text. So why would we jam type in the middle? Type belongs at the beginning or the end. I like it plenty good at the beginning, right? Because it reads better. Toggle attribute is my method. And the first argument is, what attribute are we toggling? In this case, we're saying we're going to toggle the type. I feel like I've lost some of you on you. Do you not remember when we're writing a form element in JavaScript, like input type password, right? That's where type is coming from, is this attribute here. And what we toggle back and forth is the value that that type attribute is set to. Okay? So I like this. I like this toggle attribute type, and then here are the two different values we're going to toggle between. That's a much cleaner line of code there. Same thing down here with our toggle label. I'm going to get rid of this HTML bit. I'm going to change this to .toggle label, which is now no longer a function, but it's going to be a first class jQuery method. And I can get rid of this password toggle because that's redundant, right? You see it at the beginning of the method, and then with the function, it appears later on. Now we've got one line here: password toggle, toggle label, show password, hide password. 2 arguments. That's it. Unlike the other one that needs 3. All right? Clear so far? There's weird looks on people's faces. Okay, so let's implement this. So I know, let's do the toggle label one first, because that's only 2 attributes. That's a little easier. Right? So toggle label. Right? Those are the 2 arguments I need, old and new. Show password, hide password. Okay? Now what do we do in here? Do we have somewhere in our code something that toggles stuff? Yes. It's in the line above it. We just did it as a commit, right? We've got this wonderful toggle value function that we can drop in here. Toggle value, right, which takes 3 arguments. We take in our old label, right, which we're going to get from our method, new label, and somehow we have to get our current label, right? Yes? Right? So now we need to figure what else. So this is going to tell us our correct new and old label. We just need to fill in the rest of what we're doing in here. Okay. jQuery gives us this lovely, or actually not even jQuery gives us this. We get this from JavaScript, which refers to what? Object-oriented JavaScript tiers. What's this? Yep, absolutely. Right? So we can refer to, here's how we get our current value, right? We can do current label, just grab the HTML that we've got right now. All right? And then if we want to set the HTML, we just refer to this thing, right? And in fact, we can do all of this in one nice, tidy package. We can drop this entire function call, which of course is only going to what? Remember? All we're doing is returning, and here we're not even saying a string anymore. This could be a number, right? I like 7 things, I like 4 things, I like 7, I like 4. This does not make any prejudice against numbers, right? It's just returning one of 2 possible values, right? We can dump this whole thing right into our HTML function from jQuery. Just like that. And now we kick our semicolon to the outside. Right? And we're adding this other variable here just to make this thing a little bit more legible rather than referring to this .html again in the body of the function. All right? So let's really go for broke here and try to do the same thing with our toggle attribute function, which when we implemented it, what 3 arguments do we need? Type, text, and password. Yes? So we'll do the attribute we want. We'll do the old value and the new value. Okay. We can do a whole bunch of stealing here. Okay. Except we'll change this to current value. This, except we're not going to grab the HTML. What do we need to grab? We're going to toggle attributes. Yeah. Akvila with her raspy voice, I could even hear it from over here. We got to grab the attribute, and specifically we want to grab the value of the attribute that we want to toggle. So in theory, you could write your own little ugly toggle class method this way. It would be way too verbose, but you could do it, right? So here we're saying this is the attribute we want. Okay? And then we can even go a little bit further and steal some more. Sorry, let me just change my indentation here so it's correct. All right, so current value, we're grabbing the value of this current attribute. Then we're going to change this attribute. And of course, this is a little bit more complex, but we're going to say attr, and then we're going to just use our little toggle value thing here, except we want to use our actual variables here, so we'll say old value, new value, and current value, just like that. Okay? Now, jQuery best practices are for you to allow all of your methods to remain chainable, meaning that somebody could call toggle attr, right, and then we could call toggle class, right, and we could toggle a class of red, right, or if you're making me happy, toggle a class of isRed. Right? We can toggle state here. In order to be able to write further methods beyond the one that we've written, we need to return the value of our object, which just means at the bottom of both of these functions we need to return this. Just like that. You're looking puzzled and bemused. Or like I'm full of shit. I haven't figured out which one it is. What? No, what is it? I'm concerned. What would you do differently? You were just smiling about something else. That's very good. Okay. All right. So let's try this out, see where I screwed up. And just to prove concepts that we're not doing old code on one of these. Okay, so we'll change this to show my password and hide my password, just as a little indicator in the code that we're dealing with new things here, right? There's our toggle label, toggle attribute. Save this. Reload this. All right, good. Expected expression got D on line 28. Value, new value, current value. Whoa! Thanks, Flux. Ah, right. Just a wacky keystroke in there. Okay, one more time. All right. Okay. Now, question. Why is it saying show password? It should be saying show my password. What's that? Yeah, it's the method where we actually insert this little link into our HTML, right? We want to make sure that that wording is correct. Right? And what's funny about that is if we don't fix that, right, if we just reload this, we click it, and now it says show my password, and it's showing the password, so now it's actually going to be exactly opposite. So when we say hide, right, we expect this to see hide when it's showing and show when it's hiding. All right. So let's go find our line where we insert that thing. Right, here it is. Password input, append, show my password. Right, because that's screwing up the logic of our show hide thing. So if I reload this, okay, show my password, hide it, show it, hide it, show it, hide it, show it, hide it. Okay? Questions? I can't read what's happening in here today, and I don't know why it's bothering me most other days. Is this interesting? Do you not give a fuck? Where are we at? Like, well, I'll change it accordingly. It's okay not to give a fuck. I get it. It's April. Late April. Mid-April. There's some nightmares happening in your JavaScript, right? Like big stacks of if-else statements, big stacks of CSS where the same three properties get repeated with minor variations one-to-one. Alejandro.
Is the lot of documentation on jQuery.fn? Because for me, I'm still like getting used to it since I
Yeah, they actually, I saw it on the
JavaScript so much. So like I'm kind of
Sure. So actually there's a Yeah, I saw this on the results here. This how to create a basic plugin. This is a good place to start. Let me drop this into the chat room. Right? This is going to have more advice for if you want to publish your own jQuery plugin that somebody else could drop in. Right? So one of the things that they say is don't. Is it possible to mute that? Right? They say don't do this, which is what I've just done, where we've got two different functions here, open pop-up and close pop-up. They say make it one called pop-up, and then we allow it to pass in an argument. I'm not having any delusions that I'm going to package up my crazy password toggle thing as a library for somebody else to use. So I'm okay polluting up my copy of jQuery for the things that I need to do. So there's some things that you won't get here. Okay? But in terms of the overall thing, like how do we just, like in this case, they have this thing called Greenify. How do we register with that with jQuery so that you can chain off things like this? Right? That's what that's doing. Okay? And you can see they use the same syntax like I did. Right? Doing a function assignment here, right? We're not calling function as like a definition. We're just saying equals function, right? So it's going to take that value. In this case, they're referring to this, which again is whatever jQuery has selected back here, right? That's what allows us to chain things in jQuery so nicely, right? So we just say this, and then it's CSS. In this case, it's saying take the color attribute, set it to green, and then the last thing they do is return this, which is what allows us to keep chaining additional methods onto things so that you can have a more expressive script in jQuery and that you just don't break things for people. If they expect in jQuery to be able to chain out 8 or 10, 12 methods, we might argue whether that's a smart thing to do, but if users expect it, right, then we should make sure that our code conforms to those kinds of expectations. So we explicitly return this at the end of whatever it is that we're doing in jQuery. The other thing that I think is probably curious here is that I left my function toggle value in the script, right? Any question marks go over your head. It's like, wait, if we're writing all of these objects and methods in jQuery, why wouldn't we just put all of our logic in there as a complete contained thing? Right? I mean, this is where jQuery gets weird, or rather JavaScript gets weird, is that things that are, or that look like methods are actually just functions that are wrapped up in particular kinds of ways. So this isn't a huge sin here to have this sort of broader function called toggle value and then import that into our methods. Right? There's no problems with scope there or anything like that. Okay? And that's what allows us to keep these actual toggle methods much shorter. We don't have to go back through the rigmarole of, oh, this is the current thing, and this is the old thing, and if it's different, then we want to return this. We've already put that all in its own function. So we're able to refer to that here. I wish I had more coffee. I'm sure that you're glad I don't. Okay. All right, let's do some commits. All right. So I'm going to do my same trick again. Good old git add patch, because I want to make this its own commit. Right? It's entirely possible that as I'm working on this thing, I've got my own little suite of scribbles and things that I don't want to have go into the main repository. So if I make a nice clean commit with just the part that I want, I can do that. So git add patch. Here's our first hunk. I want to stage it. Yes. This one I do not. Okay. Partially because it's got show my password and hide my password, which is ridiculous. We can get rid of that possessive and have a cleaner interface, right? So, but for right now, this is good. So I can say git status again. Git commit -m. added jQuery methods for toggle attribute and toggle label. All right. And this stuff here I'm going to fix. All right, let's set this back. Just show password, hide password. Just like that. Do one more git diff. Now we've got a cleaner diff here because it's just these 2 lines that have changed. Again, look at how, not that you can see it on this wacky thing with the projector, but we made this so much shorter, right? Here's what we were doing before when we were passing in a function in the middle of that object, and now we've made this, right? Does anybody know what this is called? What kind of programming this is called? Starts with an L, rhymes with iterate, literate. Has anybody heard of this before? What's the guy's name? Donald Knuth, I think. K-N, literate programming. Let's do a quick Google search. I'm pretty sure Don Knuth is the guy behind literate programming. Yeah, Donald Knuth. See? I'm not a complete idiot. Donald Knuth, right? In which a program is given as an explanation of the program logic in a natural language such as English interspersed with snippets of macros and traditional code, right? So taken to its extreme, when we do literate programming like this, or what is often referred to as literate programming, we're trying to get rid of the need to write a whole bunch of comments as to what we're doing. If I have something called ID password, there should be no, right? Am I grabbing a username? Am I grabbing a big blue box? Am I grabbing an address? No, right? This is why I'm always preaching about semantic code. And again, some of you are like, purple box, left col 1, like these things that have no semantic value, right? We say ID password, you should have a pretty strong idea about what that thing refers to. And then we have a method called toggle attr, right? Which is probably going to be attribute. What's that method going to do? Like, come on, literally toggle an attribute. We're going to toggle an attribute on ID password. Which attribute are we going to toggle? Why, we're going to toggle the type attribute. What are we going to toggle it between? Password and text, right? We don't need to write 5 lines of comments explaining what we're doing here. And same thing here with toggle label, right? We've got this password toggle that's maybe not the best named thing in the world, but then we've got a method called toggle label. What's that going to do? Toggle the label. What's it going to toggle between? Show password and hide password, right? Versus what we had before, which we had .html, toggle label, show password, hide password, and then suddenly here's some more jQuery selectors going in here, right? Wasteful, long, verbose, more to sort out and more to try to clean up, all right? So this has been refactored very nicely. All right. Oops. Come back, come back. Awesome. Looks like my computer is frozen. Or did I just blow it up? There we go. There we go. Git status. Git diff. Okay. Okay. All right, am I done refactoring my JavaScript at this point? Probably not, right? Because none of this makes any sense. Okay. I think I would probably be inclined to do some things like this. We'll have our toggle value. Our users could probably stay here. We can add in some comments. Generic toggler function used in jQuery methods below. Right? That's a good comment. And that's what a comment should do, right? If we're going to open with something like a generic function like that, let's explain what it's doing there so you don't build up a big mystery in the head of the developer who comes after you, right? Right? And then we want to, if it's not obvious enough, jQuery method to toggle label HTML text. jQuery method to toggle a particular attribute's value, like that. And I can probably get rid of these logic to toggle a label things here. All right, now we've got this current user thing, which is part of what I wanted to get to, although in 20 minutes, I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but current user probably should not be below those jQuery functions. So let's actually put this right up next to our users. Function to establish a current user based on URL hash. All right, there's our generic toggler function. There's our jQuery labels. All right, now at this point I might say, make this big and bold, jQuery to manipulate the page, right? Right, so now I know that everything that I'm going to do below, there's not going to be any new variables introduced, there's not going to be any new functions introduced, there's not going to be any new methods introduced. We're going to use now everything that's been declared above, right? So there's our utility functions for adding and removing that class. Here's this little account details thing. I still don't like where that is, but at least it's doing the same thing. There's our password input toggle. And here's our login form, right? No new variables, no new methods, no new functions below that point, right? And that's the style I've chosen. You might flip it in a different way. Of course, you have to be careful with variable hoisting and things like that. So, and the important thing to note is that all I did here was to copy and paste, right? I just moved things around. We look at our git diff here, right? We'll see some things that are deleted, but they're appearing different places with the exception of those little comments. If you I have an alias for git dw, which will actually show me on a word-by-word level what I've changed. And I'll often use that if I've done some copying and pasting to say, okay. All right, so do git add dot, reorganized the order of the JavaScript file. All right? That's nice and tidy. I like the work a lot. We might want to go back and just check one more time that everything is behaving as we expect it to, which I think there's one thing that's not. So let's find out. Okay, 8080. Okay, good. There's one thing that's not working still, and that is that when I click my password toggle, I'm getting null up here, which is going to cause me headaches later if I'm doing things with those hashes to grab a current user out of an array. So I want to go back and figure out where that problem is. And of course, it should be right here where we're registering this click event, right? Password toggle click. Here's where I'm saying go to ID null. So what I want to do at the very end of this stack, call on that E object, which is what? What does E stand for? Event, right? When we use this particular syntax in jQuery, we call this on method. We listen for one or more events. Then we use a callback function that gets run once this event fires. That callback takes at least one argument, the first of which is the event itself. So here we're going to say prevent default. All right, so now if I go back, check this one more time. Except I've got null in that URL. Fresh URL, please. Okay, showing, hiding, nothing's changing in my URL. Cool. So that's our last little screw to polish off here. Prevent default null hash on password toggle. Okay, everything's clean. So now I can go back being happy with this code. I can check out my master branch, and I can do git merge refactor JS, and it goes and sticks those commits right onto the end of my master branch. Okay? No fuss, no muss. I probably should have showed you how to squish commits, squash commits. Oh well, we can do that next week. What's that? You can, you should know how to do everything except merge a pull request just on the command line. Because sometimes it's helpful even when you're working by yourself. Before you even submit a pull request, go ahead and squish all those commits into one thing. I don't know that all of these would be good candidates for squishing, partially because they were doing such different things that we might later have to go back and rework a commit, right? If we discover I introduced some error in the jQuery or something, we can do that. Okie dokie. So, poor old Sally's success. Well, she's all right, but Freddie failure here, right? I want to work this out. Ooh, let me work it out someplace else, right? Don't want to do good work on, or experimental work on master, so let's do git branch first of all. How about H? All right, so I'm going to do git branch lowercase d refactor JS, right? And it will quietly delete that branch with a lowercase d because I've already brought over all those commits, so nothing's going to get lost. All right, now I can do a new git checkout b, and I'm going to do users. Okay, so I'm on this branch user. So I want to change all of this stuff. Sally success, and Freddie failure, and Polly problem. All right, I'm going to make this an array of users. Although I can envision a further revision where this becomes actually just an object full of objects. But for right now, we'll just stick with an array. Okay, so we name these things. Users, Sally success, username, Freddie failure, username, Polly problem. Just like that. Okay? Just a little array full of objects. Let me fix the spacing a little bit. Now, there are things, if I can go back over to my JavaScript console here. Let me go to about blank, so we just have an empty canvas, right? If I do things like var, animals, cat, dog, bird, right? If I create an array like that, I get certain convenience methods from that array object, right? I can ask it things like animals.length, which is 3. Zach, you were asking about length the other day, weren't you? Right? So we could say animals.length. And of course, we can also do things like animals to.length, which should be, whoops, not length, length, which will be 4. What does animals to.length refer to? Yeah, bird, right? We're saying get the element at position 2, which again we have to remember is 0, 1, 2 is bird, .length is 4. So we get a length method both on arrays, which tells us how many members there are of that arrays, but we also get a length method on strings, which will tell us how long the string is, right? So we get all these sorts of different kinds of convenient methods. We can do things like this. We can say animals index of dog, which returns 1. What's 1 in relation to dog? Yeah, it's the index of it, right? If we did index of cat, what would we expect to see come back? 0, right? Because it's at the 0th place in the array. So we can do things like this if we wanted to find out, right? Let's say this was a really huge array. What's the index of fox? What's going to come back? Say it louder, Marco. No, actually, it won't be undefined, although that's a good guess. Anybody know what comes back if you look for an index of something and it's not there? That's actually going to return -1. Okay? For everything, right? Animals, index of, huge, orange, fox, going to be -1. Yes, Bobby?
What if I had two of the same thing? So let's have two cats.
That's an interesting question. I believe it's going to return the first one, but let's find out. So what's our array again? Cat, dog, bird. So let's push bird onto the end of that. So we can say animals.push, right? Because JavaScript gives us a push method, which does what, Bobby? Yeah, adds it onto the end of the array. So if I animals push bird, console log animals, right? So we've got 2 birds. I'm guessing that index of is going to return the first one that it finds and quit. Yeah, that's what it does. Okay. We'd have to dig further to find out what happens if we've got duplicates in an array. Okay. Now, do you remember for loops from 1,000 years ago? Right. What do we do with for loops? Yeah, we iterated over the array, right? So that we could do something like go through for each element in the array, go through, print out cat, dog, bird. Because we've only got 10 minutes left, I'm going to just help you, or just ask you to remember that. There's a particular function that is useful, or rather method that we get with arrays called map. Does anybody know map? You can encounter this in other languages where you can use the map method on an array. What it does. Let's look at our JavaScript documentation for map. So the map method creates a new array with the results of calling a provided function on every element in this array. Okay? So this is a really helpful thing to do. So for example, if we wanted to quickly print out all of our animals, we could do, rather than writing a for loop, we could use this map function. We could do animals map function E, which is going to be each element in that array. And we can just do console log E. That's right. Right? There we go. Cat, dog, bird. Which is interesting because it stopped with that first bird. Huh. I didn't realize. What's that?
It shows a number 2 next to the bird.
Ah. So that didn't, it's Firefox trying to be kind and saving us from looking at the word bird twice. Thank you, Ari, for your eagle eyes, right? So console log gets called for each member on those arrays, all right? Which is a weird way to use it. But the reason I bring that up is that the second that we do something like this, it gets a little bit more complicated in the world of arrays, right? What if we have this user's array of objects, right? Let me just, actually I'm just going to reload here, clear this out. Right, animals should be undefined. Good. So if I put in this user's array, okay, with animals I could use that index of method to find out whether fox was a member of it. Now I wish I had it back. Let's do it one more time. Just with 2 items, right? We could do var animals, dog, cat. Right? If I wanted to find out whether there was one of those animals in the array, I could do animals index of dog, and it's going to return a 0 or greater integer with its position. If I ask for a non-existent thing, fish, it's going to give me -1, right? Which we can use that logic to figure out things like, is there some particular user in our group, right? The problem is that if we want to find out the index of something, right, if I go to users index of, how do I find out if there is Sally Success in my array? Or Polly Problem? Can I do username, oops, right? Username, Sally Success. It's going to give me a -1. Okay, and just if you're concerned that maybe I did a typo here, let me grab the actual Sally Success line here. Let's run it one more time. Username Sally Success. Right, still -1. So this index of method is not going to work for us if we've got a more complex array. Which, why would I care, John, about being able to find out if Sally Success is in my list of users?
Yeah, if she's logged on, you could like print her name.
Could be. I'm also thinking about what this is doing for me, right? Like, oh, come on, Carl. With the fat fingers, here we go. Right down here, right now, I'm doing this. I'm seeing if username value is user 0, so I've got this 0 position where I'm looking for somebody, and in this case, that happens to be Sally. But if I really make this a complex thing, right, where I have Polly problem and Freddie failure and Sally success and Maggie owes money and Charlie has a credit, you know, if I add all of these other kind of personas on there, what I'll probably do is I'll look for one of them, like is this Freddie failure because we don't even want to let him log in. But for everybody else, just log them in, right? Log in Polly problem and Maggie owes money and whoever else it is that we're doing. And if I want to be able to do that without having to write if a dozen times, I want to be able to go through this array and find out exactly who is logged in or not. Okay? So here's what we can do. And I'm going to write this in the console because I've got 5 minutes left and I'm afraid it's not going to work. Well, let's do it. I'll just paste it over. Okay. And I'm going to call this function find a user in our array. So I'm going to do function has user, okay, and I'm going to do return shoot, come on Carl, don't flake now. Return user.username is exactly equal to come on, Carl, that's not the right thing. That's not the right thing. That's not the right thing. User.username, is equal to, oh. All right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to just like walk away from this one because it's not going to happen. I'm panicking because there's 3 minutes left. This is where we'll pick up. What we're going to do is we're going to use a different method. Let me show you where we're headed. Okay, we're going to use this map thing. Oh, you know what? I'm making this way too hard. That's what the problem is. We just want our little function to find out if... Let me write it out. We're going to do users map function. And I'll just use u because we're going to go through each user in our list, right? Users map function u. Now I'm still going to screw this up because what we want to do is we want to find out whether a person is in that thing. All right. We'll pick up here on Monday. So close so far. All right. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week. Users map u. Fried a little bit. Thank you so much. A calendar, yeah, sure.
So like she had 7 other people and
Well,